Welcome back. I'm Ted Thomas, and in this episode, we're going to talk about Georgia tax deed sales, which are really tax deed auctions. And when we talk about auctions in Georgia, they have over 150 counties in Georgia, and they're authorized to do an auction every month. So there could be as many as 150 auctions in Georgia every single month. All right, so we're going to talk about this because there are a lot of students that are confused about what's really going on at these tax defaulted auctions in a redeemable state. So if you don't understand what redeemable deeds are, so let's learn step by step that process so you get it. So this presentation will clear up a lot of the confusion, and I think you'll find out that Georgia is a place where you really want to do this. Why do you want to learn there and do there? Because you're going to get a minimum of a 20% return. Nothing wrong with a 20% return. So throughout the videos, I'll include some interesting examples of previous students and how they did, and I'll get some in about Georgia, and we'll see if we can get some other states while we're at it. So the facts in Georgia are this. Each of the counties within the state has some minor adjustments to how they do the auction.
How better go there, how better go there, how better go where, how better go here, how better now, how better go.
So I'm going to give you the rules, the base for the whole state, but you always want to read the rules for the auction in case that state has some peculiar or unique way that they want to do things. All right, so it all starts with the legislature. The legislature authorizes the treasurer and the county supervisors and the board of supervisors to do something about people that don't pay property tax. All right, so they're going to request that the treasurer levy the tax, and when the tax is levied, they're going to send out multiple notices if the people don't pay the tax. All right, now if the people continue not paying the tax, then they're going to issue not only the levy, but they're going to start what we call a foreclosure process, but it's a levy, and they're going to confiscate or they're going to seize the property. When they do that, they're going to sell a tax deed on the property. All right, so the property owner, the person receiving all this, well, if they don't pay attention to those due process notices, they could end up losing the property. All right, now when Georgia sells a deed to the property and you or I buy it at the auction, we're buying a redeemable deed. Now, what on earth is a redeemable deed? Well, a redeemable deed simply means that if the property owner wants to come back and redeem the property, they can do that. The rules require that the sheriff auction the property off, and when they auction it off, they auction it to the highest bidder. So that's very similar to all the other tax defaulted auctions.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get her going here. Start me off. Where to bid to go? How about $1,000? Open it up.
However, in this case, the property owner can come forward and they can redeem the property. Now, they can do that from any day, from day one all the way to day 365. So any day they want to come in and redeem, they can come in and redeem. Now, what do they do to redeem the property? They come in and pay you back whatever you invested in the property plus a 20% return. So your worst case in Georgia is you're going to make a 20% return. So the property owner can come forward, pay you whatever you paid for the property, in other words, the auction price, and a 20% penalty. All right, that's a redeemable deed. They can do that anytime in the first year. If they do it in the second year, they have to come forward and pay you whatever you paid plus a 30% penalty. And the year after that, it's a 40%. And the year after that, it's a 50%. So, folks, in Georgia, you can make yourself plenty of money buying redeemable deed. All right. Now, the auction always goes to the highest bidder. So that's just like other tax defaulted auction. All right. So redeemable deed simply means the property owner lost the property. However, they can come forward at any time, and with a 20% penalty in the first year, 30% in the second year, 40% in the third year. You're getting the idea. All right, so this works in all Georgia counties. So what does all that mean? That simply means that you can earn a high interest rate of return, but it's not an interest rate of return, it's a penalty return. So you get a penalty, whether it's 1 day or 365 days, you're going to earn at least 20% in the absolute first year. Now, in order for that owner to recover, they just have to pay what you paid at the auction, plus give you the 20%. So this is a powerful rate of return. Good place to do this is the state of Georgia. All right, the auction buyer is purchasing a redeemable deed. when you purchase a redeemable deed, you don't want to go and fix the property up. You don't want to do anything to the property. You don't have any rights to push the people off the property. The people are going to stay in the property. So you don't want to do anything to it, because if they do come forward and redeem it, you will have lost whatever money you put into it. So all you do is you raise your hand at the auction, you buy the redeemable deed, and then you come home and you sit on it. You don't want to do anything, because property owner can come back and redeem anytime up to the day 365 days. They can come in and redeem that. And then at that point in time, you have to conduct a foreclosure process. So you're going to foreclose on the right of redeem. On the right of redemption, you'll be foreclosing. Now, I'm Ted Thomas. I've been involved in tax defaulted properties and tax deeds for well over 30 years. Now, I'm not an attorney, so I'm not giving you legal advice in any way, okay? So what I'm doing is I'm an author and a publisher. I'm just trying to teach you the basics of what's going on. You should get legal advice from an attorney when you're buying these kind of properties, so that you understand fully what a redeemable deed means and what it doesn't mean. Okay, so the investor buys a property, they actually get a deed, all right, that normally would transfer the property to you. Well, it does in effect, but you're not going to have a redeemable deed you can do anything with until such time as that 1 year expires and you actually do a foreclosure. You're going to foreclose on the right of redeem after the 365 days. Now, Georgia has over 150 counties. All the counties are authorized to do an auction. The auction rules are created in plain English, and they're going to be in the auction site on the county records. They're going to advertise these auctions in the newspaper and on the county website. They're going to have them every single month in the state of Georgia. Now, that doesn't mean all 150 counties will auction every month, but they're all authorized to have an auction every single month. All right, now, if the owners fail to redeem after that 1 year period, you can go ahead and foreclose on the property, and then you can take over the property. And if you had to, you could push people out and require an eviction. Okay, now I'm going to give you an example of someone that's done over 100 properties in Georgia. Okay, and what I want to point out is, I want to point out the fact that you don't need a huge bundle of money to do this business. All right, so this gentleman, his name is Bob. He's done over 100 deals in Georgia. He started with me about 20 years ago. So this is perfect to show you that you don't need a lot of money to get into a place where you can start making six figures. So in this case, he purchased a residential lot. It looks like a wooded lot, and that's what it is. And he paid $6,000. However, the tax assessed value was $23,000. All right, now in the first year, if the property owner comes forward and wants to redeem, they would pay him back his $6,000 plus 20%. However, in this case, the property owner did not come forward, so he went ahead and conducted a foreclosure. All right, once he conducted the foreclosure, well, that doesn't change the tax assessed value at all. If anything, it's going to go up. As a matter of fact, in this particular lot, the county came along and put water to all the different lots. In other words, they put water mains down the main road, and guess what? That increased the value of the property. He ultimately sold the property for $17,000. So he was able to keep the margin. He bought it low at $6,000 and was later on able to sell it at $17,000. That's quite a margin in one property. All right, this particular investor has purchased over 100 properties in the state of Georgia. In this particular case, you can see that it's a wooded lot, it's a residential lot, so whoever gets the property is going to have to clear it up before they can build on the property. It's assessed by the tax collector at $23,000. However, he bought it at auction for $6,000. So if the property owner comes forward and wants to redeem it, they'd have to pay $6,000 plus 20% in the first year. However, the property owner never came forward. So he foreclosed on the property. Now he owns the property assessed at $23,000, but improving because water was coming, being installed by the city and the county. All right, so now he has a $23,000 property, but he sells it on the market. So he bought it low. It's worth $23,000. Now he's going to sell it a little low, so sell it quickly, and sells it for $17,000. So what am I trying to show you here? Folks, you can get into business. You don't need a bundle of money. You're just going to buy it low and sell it low, and you see these huge profits. So that's almost doubling the money in just a short 1 year period of time. So that gives you some idea. All right, now if you can buy properties for 10 and 20 cents on the dollar and resell them, or do just like this man did, he bought it for 20 or 25 cents on the dollar, no deed of trust on the property, and no mortgage. Well, if you can buy properties that way, how many of those properties would you want to buy? you'd want to buy as many as possible. Well, people say, well, what do I do with it? Well, you could sell it. Now, how would you go about selling it? Could you put it on the MLS? Could you put it on eBay? Could you use Craigslist? Could you use Trulia? Could you use Zillow? You could use any one of those sites. Put it on Facebook Marketplace and see if someone wants to buy it there. The point is, the marketer always wins the battle. If you understand the importance of marketing, you're going to do well. The biggest blunder entrepreneurs make is they don't know how to sell, and they fail because they don't take enough action and they're not aggressive enough. Unfortunately, they fail because they don't do all the things at once. You need to market by putting signs on the property. You need to put it in the newspaper. You need to take it to real estate clubs, try to sell it there, plus all the things that I've already mentioned on this video. You see those little white circles? That's how many auctions are taking place within that state in the next 90 days. This calendar updates every single day. I'm here today to show you how to make money. To do that, I'm going to show you briefly that there are thousands of tax defaulted real estate properties across the 3,000 plus counties in the United States. This is quite interesting. You're looking at the Ted Thomas Magic Interactive Map and Auction Calendar. It changes every day. Now, I created the calendar and the map so I would know how many auctions are taking place every day in the United States. Now I can show the little guy how to make money. Most importantly, I created this system so I could have an auction list for each auction 24/7. All right, now the small counties, the small population counties, they're going to have a few dozen properties to sell. However, the large population counties, they could have hundreds. I've been to large population counties where they have thousands of properties to auction. So there's going to be plenty for everyone. Now, if you're going to buy properties at tax defaulted auction, you want to be sure and look at the property. That means boots on the ground. Why? What if there was a hurricane? What if there was an earthquake? What if there was a fire? What if it was next to a chicken farm? What if it was next to a pig farm? You wouldn't want that kind of property. You only want properties that you can resell back into the marketplace. All right, second biggest mistake people make, that has to do with you want to know what your exit strategy. So we just looked at a property, had a $23,000 value, and guess what? They were able to sell it for $17,000 quickly. All right, by understanding the value of the property and knowing what the selling price was, they're going to make some money. I'll see you on the next video. Don't forget, request your free auction list right below me.